Hello class, and welcome back to more Sketch Science. Today, we're going over the flow of energy. Now, energy in an ecosystem, last time we talked about food. This time we are still talking about food, but now instead of who does what with the food, we're going over how that energy from the food makes its way through the ecosystem. To do that, we need to know what an ecosystem is. An ecosystem. Think about it. It's eco, life, and system. You all know what a system is, right? It's a set of things that all have their purpose in one way or another. A system could be like a machine. If a machine had one cog out of line and isn't working right, the whole thing gets affected. It's the same thing with life in an ecosystem. Now, ecosystems can be anything. You could call it a habitat if you wanted to. It's all the things, living and non-living, that share the same space and interact with each other. So, in an ecosystem, let's take, for example, a little stream. So going right through the middle is our stream. In the stream, we've got water, right? That's what a stream is. Now, on the side of the stream, you might have some rocks here and there. Over here, some rocks. In those rocks might live some animals, some plants, all different things. You could have a little bush over here. That's part of the ecosystem. Maybe one over here. Long grass could be anywhere on the side of the river. That's a living thing, though. Grass is living, rocks aren't, water's not living. In the water, you could have little fish just swimming around. All these fish are part of the ecosystem. You could have little frogs on the outside. Frogs sitting out there doing their thing. That's part of the ecosystem. You could have one of those long-legged birds. Called a heron. In other places, it could be a flamingo. That's not a flamingo, that's a heron. Those long-legged birds, that's part of the ecosystem. A bunny on the side of the stream is part of the ecosystem. All of these things live together in the same area. They all share an ecosystem. Now, how does energy go from one thing to another inside of that ecosystem, you ask? You probably didn't ask, but I'm telling you anyways. Now, energy flows through three different ways. You can have a food chain, a food web, and a food pyramid. What does that mean to you? Well, a chain, if you think about a chain, close your eyes, and it's a little link. Those little metal links that go together, it's in a single path. It goes straight down. A web, on the other hand, there's a certain Marvel character that uses these. Look at all of these paths that could be taken. It's like a spider web. Your food web is going to go in all different directions, but they're all connected to a starting point. And then your pyramid. Big old triangles. You know what a pyramid is. It's not necessarily 3D with this, but to show you more. That's what a pyramid is. Chain, web, pyramid. What does it all mean? The web goes out, the pyramid goes up. Now, a food chain, a clear example of a food chain is, what if we start with our little flower friend? What would get eaten? That's our producer, right? Chains, webs, pyramids, they all start with a producer. Keep that in mind. Producers make the food. They have to be number one because they're the only ones who can make it. Number two, a little bug could come along and eat the flower. Well, if the bug eats the flower, it's step two. That's the first consumer. Well, something could eat the bug. That's our little mouse friend. Our little mouse could eat the bug. And finally, what would eat the mouse but a snake? The snake eats the mouse. Now, This is an example of a food chain. You have your producer, then you have 3 consumers. That's a basic 4-level food chain. They can be any different lengths. It could be 1 producer, 1 consumer, done. It could be 1 producer, 2 consumers, done. It could be 1 producer, 50 consumers before it ends. There likely isn't that many that would go in a row, but it is possible, depending on the ecosystem. Now, one thing we're missing is our decomposer. The reason they don't show up here in this chain is because at any point, one of these things could die without being eaten by one or the other. And you know what job it is to put that back into the soil so that the producer can start over again? That's right, the decomposer. They're outside of it because at any point, one of these objects could die without being eaten by another, and the decomposer is the thing that takes care of them. Now, that was our chain. It's one path, a single path. Meanwhile, our web could start off the same way as our chain. We could start off with our same little friend, the flower. You could go straight from the flower right to our little bug. And you could go straight from that bug right over to our mouse. And you could go straight from that mouse back over to our snake. That's the same thing we just did, right? Well, in this case, you could also add in a bird. You could add in this little bird over here. And guess what? The bird could eat the mouse and the bug. It could eat both of those things. Look, now we added a whole new level. You could also have the bird get eaten by the snake. Now there's a bunch going on here. Well, guess what? You could have another thing that ate the flower. It's not just everything goes to the bug. Say if you had a deer over here. That deer could eat the flower. Well, if you have deer eating the flower and then nothing eats the deer, it could end there. Like I said, it could be all different levels. It could be 2 levels, 3 levels, 4, 5, 6, 1. It could end at the producer itself, and the producer could just die without ever being eaten. So once again, your decomposer could be anywhere in this line. It's whatever dies, the decomposer takes care of it. Finally, after our web, which is not just one path, chain is one, web is a bunch of different paths, all showing the different levels of an ecosystem, you have a pyramid. Our little friend, the triangle. In this case, I'm going to go with the full 3D model again, just to make it easier to show a point later on. Now, pyramid, we're going to do our basic 4 levels. Level 1, over here. Guess what? Our flower is back. That is at level 1. That's your producer. That's at the base. Look how big the base is. There's a lot of flowers. Flowers have a lot of energy because they make it. They're the first ones to have it. Nothing's touched it yet. Then you have your bug at level 2. Your bug at level 2, there's still a lot of them. But look, there's a little bit less than what the flower had. And at level 3, you guessed it, we have our mouse again. He sits at level 3. There's even less than the bugs had. And finally, we have our snake friend, who sits at the top of the pyramid. He's up in the top spot. Now, the reason, one, you have those smaller levels as you go up is because there's less of that thing. Because think, if there were too many bugs and not enough flowers, that bug slice was bigger than the flowers, they'd run out of food. If that bug slice was bigger than the mice would run out of food. If the mice was bigger, or if the snake was bigger than the snake would run out of food. You have to be smaller as you go up the levels, or you will not have enough food to sustain you. Now, the other reason is, it's because this tracks how much energy there is. how much energy. At the bottom level, remember, the plants make it. So there's a ton of energy because they're the ones who make it. But in order to do that, they have to use some energy, right? So they're using energy here. So some is lost when they go up. Some of the energy is lost here. Then when they go up, the bugs have to use some of the energy from what they eat, right? So some of it's lost over here. So when it goes up, the mice are getting even less energy than the bugs did because the bugs use some. Well, guess what? Mice use energy too. Some of it's lost again at that level. And finally, it gets to the snake. The snake uses up the rest of that energy. As you see, it ends in a point. There's none left because the snake dies. At that point, that's when our friends, the decomposers, show up again. Where are they at? They're at any point because all that energy, whatever's left of it, has to be returned to the soil so it can start again. So the thing to keep in mind is as you go up, the more consumers you add in, the less energy is at every level. Producer's always on the bottom. Then it's all consumers from then on. And then whatever dies, that's where our decomposers come in. Now, if you have any questions about what you just saw, what you just heard, please leave a comment down below. And don't be afraid to like the video, because that way you can find it, to rewatch it and see it again, just in case you missed anything. And finally, subscribe. That way you don't miss any content and you can find the channel easier if you ever have to come back here to watch another one again. So remember, comment, like, and subscribe. Leave a question down in the comments below. That way I can answer it for you. Any information you think I missed, put it down there and I can be sure to add it next time. Thank you all for coming and have a nice day.